Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salat wa salam ala rasulillah. I'm Professor Jimmy Jones. I am the Executive Vice President of the Islamic Seminary of America, and welcome to another edition of TISA Talks. This one is focused on the foundations of effective organizational leadership, which happens to be the name of a course that we are presenting, inshallah, on July the 22nd through the 26th, online because of the pandemic. I usually introduce the TISA Talks, and then we have a couple of guests, and the format tonight is no difference. What you see on the screen is the thing that we've been focusing on for the past couple of months, given two things, given the pandemic itself and given the overwhelming need in the Muslim community for an upgrade for our leadership ability in our organizations. It's something called the Center for Ethical and Effective Organizational Leadership. And this is actually a flyer that we had for fundraisers during Ramadan. And mashallah, for those of you out there who gave during Ramadan, we raised 110K, which was about half of the but half the money that we needed in order to take this show on the road. In other words, we're, inshallah, if Allah permits and the virus clears up, we will be launching the first workshop on October 16th. And at the office you see here on the screen here, we're on the second floor of Serene Plaza, and we'll be having a workshop that goes Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's focused on capacity building for the Muslim community. And so what we'll be doing quickly, what we'll be doing in the workshop is focusing on mental health strategies for organizations and individuals. This pandemic has taken a significant mental health toll on individuals, and the Muslims are no different. Then we'll be looking at the power of prejudice. As you know, in the streets of the United States of America, issues around race and racism are very prevalent, and we'll try to get people to sort of have a context that's based in al-usul about how to respond to this. And then we'll go the next day, we'll focus on crisis management from our Muslim tradition and from contemporary constructs. And so we're trying to put it all together. And then on the last day, we'll shepherd people through developing either personal development, professional development plans, or organizational development plans. In either case, once you're selected, and this is a selection process, once you're selected for this workshop, you'll get a $750 grant to go home and actually implement the plan. So what we're about, aside from giving people degrees that have a long-range impact on the scholarship and the leadership in the Muslim community, we're about capacity building at this time and in this particular place right now. So, but tonight we're talking about foundations of effective organizational leadership. And we always start with an ayah from the Quran, one that people know, the meaning of which: let there rise out of your band of people, inviting to all that is good, enjoining what is right, and forbidding what is wrong. They're the ones to attain felicity. To me, this ayah is about organization, because the people who exercise leadership are people who rise and stand. And to me, it directs us the way we should go, whether we're in Islamic organizations or not. And so some of you signed up by using this flyer, and there are the three of us, the pictures of the three of us. You'll have us live here tonight. And who are we? The panelists for tonight's discussion are Dr. Tamara Gray, the founder and executive director and the chief spirituality officer at Rabita. Many of you know about this very important organization in our community. Myself as executive vice president of the Seminary, the Islamic Seminary of America, and also a member of the faculty. And Dr. Gray also is a member of the faculty. And Bonita McGee, who won't tell you this, but she's a founding vice president of the Islamic Seminary Foundation, which developed the Islamic Seminary of America. And she was on the original curriculum committee for putting together curriculum for the organization. Our co-sponsors tonight are Continuous Charity, which I would invite you to check them out. A very simple, straightforward idea. They collect money from the community in order to give non-interest loans for Muslims in higher education. I just love this idea. The president, Arthur Hawk, is on our board of directors, and people who are looking for financial aid with no interest, mashallah, Continuous Charity is the place to go. Go to their website and check them out if you're thinking about going to higher education. Don't sign those loan papers yet. Go to ACC. And then there's Association of Muslim Chaplains, an organization with which we we do the Shura every year, except this year because of the pandemic. We do a conference at Yale for the past 9 years for chaplains and imams, and AMC has partnered with that as well as other programs. Then there's the Muslim Endorsement Council of Connecticut, which is, Strike Connecticut Muslim Endorsement Council, which is dedicated to setting standards for leadership for Muslims, which is what this whole project is about, making sure that we have strong, empowered, enhanced leadership. And then Rabita, of course, Dr. Gray's organization, which is doing a tremendous educational program for women, and the multiplier effect of women who work in weekend schools and schools throughout the country, as well as working with their families. And then the United Muslim Relief, which is Dr. Abbott's organization. He's on our faculty. And so those are co-sponsors. What I want to talk about to set the table for tonight's discussion is the course itself that the three of us will be teaching, which is the same name of this TISA Talks tonight. I'm the primary instructor, which means I get to do the administrative work, and Dr. Gray and Bonita McGee are the other two instructors. And Ibrahim, who's on tonight doing the IT, is one of the teaching assistants. There's a telephone number for text. I meant to take that off, but anyway, you can see it. If you want to text me, you can do it. And then there's my email address because I'm the lead professor. All right, the course is designed to familiarize students with the basic principles of effective organizational leadership. And we focus on North America, with particular emphasis on how these principles are found in our Islamic fundamentals and practice. And I think you'll see one thing that all three of us have in common is that, mashallah, we're Muslims, and we try to make that the foundation of what we do. But all of us have worked and consulted to both Muslim and non-Muslim organizations. And I think that's the kind of meld that we want in our faculty, people who both have the theoretical knowledge and the practical knowledge. So the course objectives is to discern Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, effective organizational principles in the Meccan and the Medinan context, including conflict resolution and startup strategies. Because make no mistake about it, when he went to Medina, which was Yathrib at the time, that was a startup. And we'll look at the characteristics of what we call servant leaderships in terms of what we call the prophetic paradigm. And then we'll try to define the attributes, challenges, and advantages of human capital in organization. How do you manage people in organizations? We'll outline the opportunities, the opportunities for outline the opportunities and the options for organization constituents' participation in the process of Shura. We talk about this all the time. How do you in fact do it in organizations? And then we'll do a lot of role plays and simulations to give the students in the class an opportunity to apply what we're teaching. So quickly, 5 days. If you're thinking about taking this course, this will happen in 5 days. Of course, we'll have an intro and we'll do some leadership assessment activities in the morning. In the afternoon, we'll go to organizational assessment tools. And then we'll review. So the first day is sort of how do you get the lay of the land when it look at yourself in terms of leadership, and how do you get the lay of the land when you're trying to get an effective functioning organization. The second day, we'll be looking at leadership, the Quranic episteme. That is, what can we extract from our primary text that informs the kinds of attributes of leadership. And Dr. Gray will be doing that as the first half of the morning. And the second half of the morning, she will use primarily the Sirah to look at our beloved Prophet Islam in terms of leadership. In the afternoon, Dr. Gray will, and this is difficult in one course or even several courses, but we'll take a broad sweep of Islamic history and look at models of leadership that people have actually exercised over the past 1500 years. And I think that'll be a fascinating trip for all of us, including myself, by the way. And then day 3, Dr. Gray will be back with us with the effective leadership for the 15th century after Hijra and the 21st century. And she'll do 2 sessions on that. And then she'll pivot and look at how do you develop an organization? How do you make an organization stronger? given both our usul, both our roots, and also what we can learn from contemporary models. Make no mistake about it, alhamdulillah, I think we're following the sunnah in doing this. When our beloved Prophet ﷺ went to Yathrib, and he found, for instance, the Jews, the 10th of Ashura. I mean, that's an example. But there are other examples where he saw something good, mashallah. He said, we have a better right than you. And so we do the same thing. We take a look at what's going on outside the Muslim community. If it's good for us, it makes us more effective in doing the good. That's what we try to do. Then day 4, we will, people who took my recent counseling course will know about, we have student TED Talks wherein people have to stand and deliver, and there will be time to prep for that. And I learned a lot from it, and students, they get nervous, but if you're going to graduate from graduate school and you're looking to be a Muslim leader, you need to be able to stand up and deliver. And then we're going to do some role plays having to do with ethics in the afternoon, one of them having to do with sexual or gender ethics, if you will, within the Muslim community, which is really an important topic that often is overlooked when we talk to people about leadership within our organizations. But we'll look at other forms of ethics, and we'll do a role play, which we find to be very, very engaging for people. Then on the 5th and final day, we'll do a role play and simulation. We'll be asking the students themselves, what kind of role plays or simulations or ideas should we discuss? And we'll try to tailor the last one or two to what the students are bringing in. We have a very small class, so there's no reason why we shouldn't cater to students. And those are the 5 days. So if you're thinking about it, it's very intense. It'll be very difficult to look away, as it were. It's not going to be 5 days of lecture. It's going to be 5 days engagement in issues that have to do with making your organizations more effective and making your leadership more powerful and enhancing your leadership skills, inshallah. The text for that course, there are 4 of them. Dr. Al-Alwani, one of my mentors, Rahimullah, the Ethics of Disagreement, Al-Umari, the Medinian Society in the Time of the Prophet, Islam, and 2 books by Dr. Beacom, one on leadership in Islamic perspective and strategic planning and implementation for Islamic organizations. So those of you used to taking Dr. Gray's courses and Dr. Yasser's courses, because these are the faculty who teach the most in our program, this is a much lighter reading list than they normally give. But it's not less engaging, trust me. You'll be engaged because we want people to walk away from this course with practical skills. So I want to remind you that you can join us. If you haven't joined us for this course, you have to apply. This is not a walk-in course. This is a graduate school course. This is not an adult development course. So we assume graduate level functioning. You have to go to our website and hit application. If you just want to take one course, you can apply as an auditor, or you just want to take one course and transfer it. We actually have transfer credit. You can do that, and those are the dates for it. And it's 50% off of our regular fees. I can't remember what the fees are now, but the fees aren't very expensive in the first place. So if you're interested in learning some of the things that we're talking about and sitting with the 3 of us, inshallah, this is what you do. As we said before, we're talking about a broader perspective of leadership. Of course, we're talking about leadership within organizations, but we're talking about a mandate given to us by Allah Ta'ala, that they arise out of you abandoned people, inviting to all that is good, enjoying what is right, splitting what is wrong, and so on to the end. I want to remind you that we do have fall courses. The Academic Council voted, by the way, Dr. Gray is on the Academic Council, along with Dean Yasafadi, Jonathan Brown, and Dr. Ibrahim and myself. We voted after a little bit of discussion, because we went back and forth about it, that we want to take away the uncertainty on the semester, because we talked about perhaps being online for the first weekend and trying to be in person the last weekend. We want to take away that uncertainty, so we're online for the whole whole semester, but we have some dynamic, exciting professors. We always do, but once again, in the fall, this is our second fall offering. We're going into our second year, and there's a course called Advanced Hadith Sciences and Hadith Commentary by Dr. Jonathan Brown, people have heard of him, and Dr. Yasser Qadi teaching it together. And then there's Islam in America, taught by Imam Hamza Abdul Malik and attorney Rula Alouche and myself. That's on the first weekend, and you can go to our website and get the details. and Fiqh al-Muamalat on marriage, divorce, inheritance, economic transactions. How you can get through all of that in one course, I don't know, but you're going to find out if you take this course with Imam Rafai Arafin, who's an imam here in Connecticut, where I live, who's also classically trained and also a practicing lawyer, which is an interesting combination that we don't often get in our programs. And then Obaidullah Evans, many of you have heard of him. He's a very dynamic speaker. He's a close friend of the organization, helped us launch the organization. He's a graduate of Al-Azhar, a primary faculty at Alam. Some of you have attended there. And I think that combination of Imam Arafan and Sheikh Obaidullah Evans is going to be a powerful one. And finally, there's the principles of fundraising, where at the end you'll get a certificate in fundraising from the Lilly School, the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. And plus you get 3 credits, inshallah, if you sign up as a regular student. This is a bigger bang for your buck. I just want to note that unlike the summer classes, this won't be 50% off because we have expenses. We, like other people, we have to maintain our building and we pay our staff. And so unlike the summer classes, this will be the full regular fee, but inshallah, with the kind of faculty that we have, it'll be worth every penny, inshallah ta'ala, and may it be a blessing for you in this life and in the hereafter. This is a graphic from our fundraiser, Stronger Together, Stronger Communities. That's what we're about. Particularly, we're focusing on, we're open to everybody in the Muslim community. We want to up the leadership strength of everyone, but there are two communities we're targeting. One is women in leadership, which we feel has been marginalized often in Islamic organizations. And second, people who serve economically stressed communities, like the community I live in, by the way, where we can barely pay the imam, or the imam is volunteer and the community around is relatively poor. We're trying to strengthen those communities. It's not that we don't have other people, mashallah, but we're trying to strengthen in particular those communities. So that's the slideshow. Ibrahim will take us off screen share. And I want to reintroduce you to my colleagues. These are the 2 other faculty members of Foundations of Effective Organizational Leadership. I introduced them at the beginning of the slideshow, Dr. Tamara Gray, who's on our faculty, and Bonita McGee, who's a former student of mine. This is how we met when I was on the faculty of Graduate School of Islamic Social Sciences, but was one of the mainstays of the beginning of the Islamic Seminary of America, because she was vice chair for many, many years, and she's now chair of the advisory committee. So before we just plunge into the foundation of effective organizational leadership, I'd like to ask you from your particular perspective, for you, Dr. Gray, what it's like to teach at TISA, because you've taught a couple of semesters, and that's about as long as we've been around. This will be your third go round. And for you, Bonita McGee, as a person who was a member of the first curriculum committee, right? And a person who was with us, we had a curriculum review in December of last year. Was it December last year? We had a curriculum review where we looked at the whole curriculum, went through it. So the question to you is, what did you have in mind when you're putting this thing together? And to Dr. Gray, what has it been like being in the classroom? And either one of you could start.
I'm excited to start answering that question. I love being in the classroom for TISA. It's, I really have enjoyed, I'm a very busy person and I choose very carefully the things that I'm able to do now, as everyone is, but I just want to underline that because I've been very conscientious about choosing to be on this project, and I really respect and look up to all of the leadership, and especially you, Dr. Jones. But also I really enjoy the classroom experience. I like the hybrid piece. I do a lot of online teaching. It's nice to be able to get together when we can. I like the push for that graduate level thinking and work. I think that's really important in our, you often say it's not just adult education. And I think that message and that taking very seriously of Islamic studies is something I value very much. And also I get a lot of, or very often I have young men, young 20 in their 20s telling me, we want to learn from you. Why can't we sign up at Rabota, for example? And so here's the space. Let's see you sign up here. And I really want to say, I notice that you really are very conscientious about making sure that women are teaching at TISA, and the importance of practicing learning from women is very important in our community, and it's something that we have to model so that other people will do it. So thanks for the opportunity, and I love it.
Alhamdulillah. Bonita?
Yes. So when this was a kernel of just in our minds, and we had the first sure where we were discussing what we wanted to come from a curriculum, what we wanted to have, and one of it was rigor. Just that we shouldn't be afraid of and shy away from having a rigorous program. And as Dr. Gray mentioned, having a graduate level program and being very clear that that's part of the identity of the institution. Another is modeling diversity, and not just in gender, but in approach, in having those dynamics that you see reflected in the community, and being able to model that all of that is leadership, all of that is teaching, and showing that collaborative nature. I think that goes unmodeled, it's not modeled enough in many of our institutions of higher learning and elsewhere for that. And the next thing is that when people graduate, we want them to be high functioning, whether it's an imam, scholar, someone who can walk in and be effective day one. So that means you have to be grounded in a practical nature. We have to continuously think about what are the skills that you will get to practice while you're learning, which is why we have the TED Talk styles, which is why you're going to be writing, which is why you're going to be doing these things. If you're going to be a thought leader from this, we are trying to produce thought leaders and scholar activists and the like. If you're going to be effective in that, you need these skill sets, and you need to be able to practice them and connect them to the prophetic tradition and the texts in an effective way. So I think that we're always striving to improve and to learn, and I think we're on the right track. So I'm excited about what the new year will come for us.
Alhamdulillah. So before we plunge into the course per se, all three of us have consulted to Islamic schools, organizations at various times in our career. I have, and the two of you have. So the question gets to be, well, why have a Foundations of Effective Organizational Leadership class? What have you found, without naming names, right? Without naming organizational names, without outing people, as it were. But when in your looking at the organizations that you've consulted to, and some of us have consulted, I think all three of us consulted overseas as well, here and abroad. And so this is not just something that's happening here in North America. What's your assessment, given your work with Islamic organizations, of what's going on now?
I mean, I'm happy to jump in just say that I think that across the board, we meet very sincere people that want to make a difference, but there is a real lack of connection to best practices, and even a lack of understanding. We sort of like to throw out platitudes. Well, the Prophet ﷺ did this or said this, but not really an understanding of the wider context of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, of the sort of organizational development of the early da'wah. And so we struggle to really put that into practice, and we don't have good background in best practices in nonprofit. And so we're struggling as a community to have healthy and healthy organizations that leave a legacy. And that's my interest here. That's why we have to learn, because we want to, all of us, we all are doing good work, and inshallah everyone is sincere, but we want to be able to leave a legacy.
Bonita?
I would just add to that, I concur. I think that oftentimes organizations are started with an idea and passion, and you have subject matter experts, even with certain things, but you don't have the expertise around actual organizational development. And so the passion and the subject matter expertise will only go so far if you're looking to institutions.
Is everybody else has Bonita's seems to have frozen on us?
Oh.
Have I frozen?
I think you froze.
Yeah, I think it was you.
That would be me.
Tag, you're in.
I just got your internet connection is unstable. Just like I am unstable, the internet connection is unstable as well. Okay.
That was cute. My point being, I concur with Dr. Gray, and I also add that we get into these cycles oftentimes because I often tell organizations that your existence is not sufficient. Existing is not enough.
Being
very powerful.
It's about how effective you're being at what you're doing. And we get into these cycles that if you get into a cycle of I exist, I deserve the money, or I deserve this, and you have to be measured against, are you doing it well? And when you think your existence is sufficient, you automatically push out the concept of continuous quality improvement.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to improve if all you have to do is exist.
Right. Right.
And so these are the things that get us into negative cycles that keep us stuck. And the other thing I would only add is that Muslim organizations, and they're not just exclusive to Muslims, but I'll say that we're obsessed with the. Like, we all want to be the organization. And so in any way, there's certain things of where I have to be the big one, the big kahuna, and we lose collaboration, we lose resource, we lose effectiveness in the long term, and we lose true institution building when we're always competing to be the of whatever it is you're trying to do. And I think it will not serve us in the long term for our communities. So
I'm going to stick something in here that will probably get me in trouble. The so-called immigrant indigenous divide often comes out like this. That is to say that often people who are so-called immigrants, I won't unpack the term here, seem to act as because their parents were Muslims and they come from a Muslim country, they are right? And oftentimes, I'm talking about African-American so-called indigenous people, they often say because we were here first, they're the. And all we have to do is look at our beloved Prophet, ﷺ, what he did with the Ansar and Muhajirin, mashallah, he handled that. I mean, because you could have had that same divide there at that particular time, but mashallah, but it's a little bit of a diversion. Okay, let's plunge a little bit into the course. If you think about leadership principles in Islam, what are the first things that come to your mind?
I seem to be starting first, so I'm going to let you talk, Bonita.
Leadership principles. I think the concept of servant leader is one that is, and actually what's interesting about the concept of servant leader is now it's all the buzz in a lot of leadership circles. But the idea that the leader is there to humble and to ensure that those around them are succeeding and striving and benefiting, like you're serving a larger idea. And I think that for many of us, that our concept of leadership is leans more into the authoritative dimension, and that's not quite where I would start. And I don't think that comes from our history or heritage and that style of leadership, and we can get into the weeds about that. Other principles that I think is excellence and honesty, and I'll just stop there. So, and I'll let everyone else talk. But those are the ones that bubble to the top for me, that we often miss the mark on what effective leadership looks like. And it's often about how you raise those around you, and not just you being in the front.
Okay. Dr. Gray?
Yeah, I would definitely concur with all of those, and maybe just not rephrase, but add or whatever, just a few words to that word bank of leadership. One of them I think is diplomacy. I think it's something that we're not really aware of, and maybe diplomacy isn't the right word, but the ability to collaborate, the ability to not be angry, the ability not to be there in power for power's sake, in limelight for limelight's sake, at the top or at the front for popularity's sake, but to be there to continuously remember to be very grounded in intention. I think that's a critical principle of Islamic leadership. And that takes fortitude, because you have to revisit that every day. You've got people all around you telling you how great you are. And you have to be the one to remember, nah, not so much. And that also refers to what you referred to as well, which is ihsan. In the reaching for ihsan, we have to ground ourselves in intention. And I really think those are some of the strong foundational principles of Islamic leadership. I think the term service that you mentioned is really important. I think it's becoming a bit of a catchword, and we don't always understand it today. I think it's part of, but it is certainly critical, but I think we need to unpack it and redefine it so that we can begin to understand the implications of service, which means also leaving that ego at the door.
Okay. So you want to add something, Bonita?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I agree that because it's become such a buzzword that you almost want to stop using it. Yeah. And then secondly, an explanation point on, and I tell people this all the time, Muslim or non-Muslim, leadership is deliberate. You don't accidentally get around to it. You know, you're intentional about how you interact with people, how you're gonna treat your who you're supervising, how you're gonna interact. So I think that is, I just wanted to put an extra emphasis on that. That intention is a huge part of leadership. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you walk in the door of an organization, I know when I do, no matter whether it's a business organization, a nonprofit, or an Islamic center, you get a feel, F-E-E-L, for the organization. Should Muslim organizations have a different feel from non-Muslim organizations? And if so, what should it be? And if not, what are the similarities?
I'm so glad you didn't ask, do they, so that we would have to say something maybe not. I just want to say, yes, I think they should have a different feel, but not because we are automatically special by being Muslim, because we have a responsibility to be positive, we have a responsibility to be mission-oriented all the time. We have a responsibility to have a nonprofit culture that reflects prophetic principles. And that should be a bright light that is recognizable from organization to organization. So if I don't know you're a Muslim organization, I should be able to walk in and be like, oh, wait a minute, this place feels like a Muslim organization. Or at least that's my perspective. I really feel like that's important.
So what are some adjectives, Dr. Gray, you would add to that feeling? What kind?
I think well, adjectives would be positivity. It would be no drama. I know that's not an adjective, but I have to say it anyway. No drama, which means you're leaving your ego at the door. Again, you're leaving that ego at the door, putting the work before the self. And we live in a highly individualized society where that is not a curated habit. So as Muslims, I believe we should be demonstrating that habit and teaching other people how to live in this really positive, outreach, loving, energetic. There should be a lot of energy, a lot of light, a lot of positive emotion. Those are the words. That's my vision.
Professor McGee, your view on this issue. What would be the difference in the field between?
I'm going to do a hot take.
Can I say one word before you start? I want to throw in one more to see what you say. And super clean.
Okay, so this is my hot take. I've worked with non-Muslim organizations, I work with Muslim organizations, and when they all strive to be excellent in what they do, you will get those characteristics.
Nice.
And I think that is a benefit to everyone, that I should be able to walk into any organization and have that exposure. And then you have to allow for some flexibility and adaptability, because depending on what the organization's goal is or what it does, some of those fields are going to be different. What I like and what I hope is more common when I walk into Muslim organizations is the feeling of, I feel very comfortable in my Muslimness, that I don't have to explain or worry about things like from prayer to this. I mean, there's certain things that I feel that I should not have to be concerned with. And I can't say that that is the way of all Muslim organizations, because their concept of professionalizing means stripping away certain aspects of our identity. And I think that is unnecessary. So it's about the balance. But my hot take is, I think if you help any organization strive for excellence, you're going to get those things which, you know, naturally support and align with a lot of the prophetic traditions anyway.
So could I push the envelope a little bit on what you said? For me, if I had to answer this, I should be comfortable in my humanness when I walk in the door. In other words, that at least my view of our beloved Prophet ﷺ, is that anybody could approach him, you know, with almost anything, right? And that, you know, it was okay. Whereas we judge people. I've seen people in Islamic centers and Islamic organizations just by the way they look. Or if I say I'm a Muslim and I'm a woman and I don't wear hijab, and there's that big frown, right?
Yeah.
You know, right before anything gets started, you know. And to me, if we are witnesses to all humanity, when people walk into the Islamic center or into the whatever Muslim organization, they should feel like, as a human being, that they're okay wherever they are, and that you're not going to start judging them just by the externals.
And I'll take that a step further. Muslim organizations, if we don't start to be mindful of this, we're going to lose a generation of leaders and a generation of Muslim leaders, of Muslim women leaders, because in today's world, Muslim women don't have to fight battles that they don't have to fight anymore. They can go and be recognized, valued, opportunities for leadership, opportunities for expansion, not to be questioned constantly in institutions and organizations that are outside of the Muslim fabric, and thrive. And until we find a way to make sure that all who want to work and do this work for the community can thrive, we're going to be hurting ourselves in the long run. We're going to be crippling our institutions because we're cutting off. And other people argue it's not just women, it may be youth of a certain age, but there are other means now in today's 21st century where Muslim people can thrive organizationally, institutionally, leadership, and they don't have to, you know, the community, Muslim organizations are not the only option as they used to be. So we need to be mindful of that.
Sorry, we're going to let Dr. Gray in here, but I wanted to say that I was doing some research on Muslims in America. I was doing a newspaper interview today, and I went to the Pew Trust because they do a count of Muslims. They made the point that we're the fastest growing religion, which we love to say we're the fastest growing religion in the United States. But they also made the point is that it's like homeostasis. People are leaving as fast as they're coming, right? That we're losing people. And I think part of it, has to do with the culture of the organizations. Dr. Gray, you want to add anything on this, or should we move on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree that part of the reason is the culture of the organizations that are in existence. And I also agree that, especially in the case of women, there's so many places that women can actualize their leadership and their talents. I also think that, if just speaking in a very capitalist way, that organizations today have to take this very seriously, and they have to understand if they're not going to grow, they will not be around. And these women and young people that do care about the community, and there are plenty that do, will actualize those talents in brand new organizations, which it's frustrating to say that, oh, we're reinventing the wheel, but it's easier to go in your garage and make a wheel than it is to fight people sometimes for the wheel on their car.
Yeah,
so,
that
you know,
was Professor McGee's point about you're just tired of fighting the same battles over and over again.
yeah.
Okay, let's shift a little bit. Almost always I see online, workshop how to deal with difficult people, because almost everybody in organizations has, quote, the difficult people who are always if you're a supervisor, they're always in your office, they always have a problem. Is there a particularly Islamic, quote, Islamic way of dealing with it, or are the principles that we have here in general are the things that we should do?
I think that I'll start there a little bit. I think that anytime you talk about principles in the nonprofit world, I find them to be very Islamic. But I would like to, just for a moment, cast our gaze back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ and look at the very obvious difficult people that we all know about. Abdullah ibn Ubay, for example, Ubay, who was the hypocrite of Medina.
Mhm.
And when we look at how the Prophet ﷺ interacted with him, it's really fascinating because he was incredibly tolerant uh, of his drama, of his wasting of his stuff, just of his stuff. But even while he was tolerant, he also did not spend hours in the drama. So, you know, he didn't waste his time in it. He didn't sort of stifle him. He didn't confront him. But he also, like when he walked away from Uhud, he didn't say, let's have a meeting and let's discuss this and let's talk about this and let's see what we can do for you and what you can do for me and let's see if we can bring those people that you're taking with you. And it was just fine, no problem. And on the flip side, when there was the ifk regarding Aisha radiallahu anha, that great trial also, we see the Prophet ﷺ managing these very difficult people that are purposely causing trouble by listening, investigating, asking questions, but not getting overly upset about it. And the third quick example, I would say, in Umar's time, radiallahu anh, we see this wonderful governor who was in Sham at the time, Sa'id ibn Amr, who was not a difficult person. He was an incredible governor, but he was surrounded, and they were well known. The people of Homs at the time were well known to be really like a little bit difficult with their leaders. And they went to Umar to complain about him, and Umar's response was to bring Sa'id and ask him to stop him from that leadership, bring him in, and ask him in front of the people, like to clear it up. So what I see in with the principles that I see in our history are principles of understanding that difficult people will be everywhere, and having policies and principles and how we interact with every situation. And it's not, and that makes everything so much easier. So those are some of my thoughts. Bonita?
So think about it in advance and try to follow what we call prophetic paradigm. Professor McGee.
Sorry, I'm calling you
Professor McGee. Bonita's fine. I have not much to add. I agree. I think it's really about policy and procedure, getting people grounded. One of the things I think that also helps is to make sure that your managers have solid management skills. One of them being how to ask good questions and how to listen. I once was doing an observation, and the manager walked away and said, you know, that person, they had an attitude and they just said yes, no, and this and that. And I said, I think maybe you got the responses that you asked. If you asked a closed question, why would you think, you know, you've given no opening for the person to do anything but say yes or no? And so are you deliberately doing that to set them up? Because some managers do, to, you know, create a situation. Or do you realize that you're asking bad questions? You're not asking questions that are open, that help explain or anything like that, and they hadn't thought of it. So I think that policy, procedure, but also making sure your manager or whoever's doing the supervising has just some core solid management skill. Oftentimes people get into management without actually having the skills of a manager. It's kind of something you just kind of end up going up the line depending on the structure of your organization. And when that happens, you have to think about the development of your staff, and then match the skill to the authority and the supervision that person's going to have, and not to go cheap on it. Don't just hope it happens. You have to actually invest in staff development if you want to get out of it.
Effort, the money, yes. So just to our people who are watching, we're going to be taking questions from you. You only have one question right now. We're going to deal with two sort of hot button issues, and then we're going to pivot to the questions from the people who are watching. One is the quote Me Too movement, and the other is what I call the founders syndrome. So let's look at the Me Too movement for a moment. As you know, in the past couple of years, we've had this tremendous general outpouring around sexual abuse within all kinds of institutions in the general population and in the Muslim community, parenthetically. do we have this as a serious problem? And if so, what should we be doing about it? I know that's not a 1-minute answer, but let's open up the topic.
I mean, yes, we have it as a serious problem. Even if we had one person that was involved, one person in a leadership position, especially in my view, especially someone who's claiming religious leadership, this becomes extremely problematic because sexual abuse becomes multiplied into spiritual abuse, and then you're messing with the person's dunya and akhirah.
Yes.
So it's really serious. And I want to apologize for Professor McGee for just calling you by your first name. Please forgive me for that. And thank you, Dr. Jones, for correcting me like 3 times until I finally heard you.
No, I was correcting myself. I'm saying Dr. Gray, I'm saying Bonita, Dr. Gray. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, thank you. That was on the survey. Thank you. I would say yes. And here's the sinister part of it all. The screen behind what's in front is that our institutions in a larger culture that maybe not directly, but at a minimum inadvertently supports or causes difficulty for someone to come forward. And the default position is always typically to protect the man, his reputation, his livelihood, typically at the expense of those who are coming forward. And this is not something that is, I know people, the minute you say that, people are like, feminist. It doesn't matter whatever you want to put to it. The reality is that we have cultures and institutions that prejudge the rightness of a situation, and those who have had harm done to them or have said, I have been harmed, are not embraced and protected and considered in the same way as those who are not. And that typically falls around gender dynamics.
Yeah, which is a very dangerous precedent. And it's a great tragedy of our community. And it's very difficult to bring it up and talk about it in community. I mean, I've been shut down more than once in just trying to talk about it. Oh, that doesn't happen here. Oh, that's not important. I mean, and then the wave comes of all of what's really happening, and then gets sort of packaged nicely. It's very frustrating, and I think as the Muslim community facing it is our responsibility. And again, if we go back to the stories of the Prophet and Umar radiallahu anhu, especially in how he dealt with accusations, immediately it doesn't matter because we're always being told, what if it's not true? What if it's a false accusation? Well, that question should not be that's not how we start. If we want to imitate Umar radiallahu anhu, then how we start is we stop the person. It is a privilege to have a job, not a right. So we stop the person, we bring that person, and we talk to them we ask the questions, and they don't have to keep working until we find out. And I'm not saying it's our job to investigate. That may be an outer person, but it is our job to protect those who are being affected by the sort of congregation or constituents of that leader. And the other piece I wanted to say about that is that, I forgot. But anyway, that I get hot under the collar, so to speak, about this issue because it's so frustrating to me. And I know for a fact, looking at history, that if we do not address this 20, 30 years from now, we're going to be in our situation around the world is going to be very, very dismal as far as our young people and our youth and those who are able to cling to faith. And we're playing with people's dunya and akhirah. It's really dangerous.
So it strikes me that within the prophetic paradigm, we have principles already laid out for how you lay out male-female relationships within a corporate atmosphere. And it seems to me that you should think out loud about this. If you're going to establish a new organization, you should think out loud about this before a crisis. The worst time is when the crisis happens. Then you got to figure out what are my policies. My guess is one thing, you should make it clear that this is just not acceptable. There's no excuse for it. period. That's
zero tolerance,
Yeah,
zero
yeah.
tolerance. And as you said, if we just the simple basic concepts of Sharia were applied, then much of what is happening would be impossible.
Yeah.
Because if you just are not alone in a room together, then what? I mean, then how are you perpetuating? I mean, how is the abuse happening?
Right.
I realize that there are some times when it is in a room with other children and stuff like that. So I know that that's not an absolute, but it certainly would. There's a large percentage of problems that would not happen if that just did not happen. That should just be a rule. Open door policy, period. End of story.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna take this up, inshallah, in the class. I'm sure our students have something to say about. Let's pivot so we can get to the people who are watching. Something called the founder syndrome. That is to say that there are organizations and Islamic centers that were founded by individuals, and it seems as if what they say goes, and that's it. What do you do about those kinds of situations?
Well, again, it's a cultural mindset. And I would say this, having founded an organization, I was blessed in that the people I co-founded with, we knew early on, like, we can't wait to retire. You have to think about your succession. And founder syndrome only hurts the institution in the long run. If you want your institution to outlive you, if you want it to be successful in the way that you envisioned, you may need to step back. The problem is many founders realize too late that they need a successor. And by that time, they're tired, they're a little burnt out, and they just want to get out of town. But you haven't identified potential leaders. You haven't invested in a pool of leadership. You haven't mentored anyone. No one's ready to take the reins. So succession is something that any board should be thinking of from the beginning, how you're going to continue to get new ideas and new energy into your organization. And then, we see this more commonly, founder syndrome in Mosques, because it's so personal. They were the founding families of a small town that grew from, 10 families, and now it's 200 families. And they can't seem to let go because the vision, it can only be what their vision is because they started it. And I think that's when you have to find ways of intervening or just voting them out of it, because you want people to go softly, but sometimes if you're thinking about the overall health of your institution, of your community, and you skip generations, or those generations, we're seeing the results of that. There are people who are unmasked for a reason.
But should people take people to court, for instance? Because that's what people do. They take people to court.
I don't know about legal. I mean, that gets into a whole new thing, but I think
that's what we do. We do this. Right?
That's a level of this. But my point being is that transition and succession should be a conversation that any board should be having in the first 1 to 3 years of their existence, period.
And I think that we need to have a lot of open conversations around that. I mean, we have to start forcing those conversations. I'm a founder. And it's a conversation we've had already. I would say for the last 3 board retreats. So our board lives around the world. So when we come together once a year, and I have to admit to you, it was a tough conversation the first time we had it. It was hard to think about. It wasn't intellectually as difficult as it was emotionally, but we have to be people of taqwa, and that goes back to those principles of leadership. That if we really are creating, are we creating an organization, or are we creating a fan club?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it definitely needs to be an organization, and successor. Like in my case, this consideration of. Or let me talk about myself, but the consideration of successor should also be very broad. It doesn't have to be a person. It can be a number of people doing a number of different jobs. And that's part of the uplifting of communities. So you're saying, oh, that person might be a really good A, this person might be able to do this B thing, and just really being creative about it and giving people opportunity to take that intention forward so that you're getting rewarded later. I mean, what a blessing to be a founder if you're able to not have it be a fan club.
Well, yeah, intention is a key word. I'll get back to you, Professor McGee. Intention is a key word here, because what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for praise, so people say you did a great job, or you're doing it to please Allah ultimately? And if that's true, to me, there are two things. You should be able to step away from it, for one thing. And secondly, you should also be able to let the organization fail or close if it's not serving the purposes of the community. That's the other thing. You get the organizations that go on because people give to it because they have a name and people know it. And, you know, my example is the March of Dimes. When I was a kid, the March of Dimes was to fight polio. Along came Salk vaccine. Most people don't know what that is, SALK. And polio was wiped out. But the March of Dimes, they pivoted, and now they do birth defects. They'll never be wiped out by a vaccine again, if you know what I mean. Because there are many. I don't want to rag on the March of Dimes, but that's an example. The organizations tend to want to keep themselves going. That's the other end of the curve, and that we're leaving here, you know, and we should be concerned with what our accounting will be before our Lord. Okay, we're about to wrap up. Let's ask. I have one question here.
I just wanted to make one final comment
Sure.
on that.
Go ahead.
To the point of, I also, even though I made the intention and we prepared on retirement, that conversation was still hard when we had to have it.
Yep.
So even when you're prepared for it, it's hard. And secondly, your sunsetting, that is also a plan that as a board, you can have a plan for how you transition out. You need to know if we fail to, that's also a process that can take 6 months to however long. Where does your funding go? What happens, you know, if you started any funds of any kind? Those are real actual process. It's not like, oops, I guess we're done. There's actual process and legal ramifications if you're going to sunset, especially if you're a 501c3. And it's something that a board needs to also think about and think through way before as a possibility if it should happen.
And if you're fairly competent in your job, the board is not going to want to let you go. I mean, Professor McGee and I are good examples. I was the founding chair of the Islamic Seminary Foundation, and I fought maybe 3 to 5 years to get out of the chair. I mean, because I didn't seek it, and anyway. And now I am executive vice president, and my long-range vision is for somebody else to take this position, because it wasn't my intention to head the organization. I just wanted to be and wanted to be a part of it. The same with Professor McGee. She was the founding vice chair, and when she tried to get off for 3 years or so, and she finally broke free from us, right? And she's now chair of the. But you have to do things like that, because if the organization is valuable for the community, it will survive, inshallah. If it's not, it won't survive. And after all, we all have to get ready to meet our Lord. How's that for an upbeat conclusion to that point, right? So anyway, the question here is it important to draw a clear line between pursuing leadership and being given leadership? Should Muslims be deliberately seeking leadership?
I don't think we can answer that. I personally couldn't answer that as in a general way like that. I think it's very individualized. Unfortunately, there are a large number of narcissists who pursue especially religious leadership because of the adulation. So I think that if a person is a narcissist or has any sort of leanings towards narcissism, then they definitely should not be a leader. Other people, you know, it might be that they have the real skills to really bring that organization together, and they would be amiss to step back and say, no, I'm not going to do it. So I think it's really quite individualized and takes some real self-knowledge to know is this my responsibility, or is this something that I should avoid?
And just to hammer that home, one of the most important things that for leadership is self-awareness. And the only one who can be self-aware is you. You have to call your, you have to know your blind spots and your weaknesses and your intention, and it goes together. I also don't want us to conflate positions with leadership. You
Right.
can be a subordinate, you can be anywhere in the organization and display leadership.
Absolutely.
Right? The position, however, is a different ball of wax. So we'll get that to the course of what's management, what's leadership, what's how to use authority, those types of things. But leadership can happen at any level of an organization that can be displayed. Positions are a different matter. And if you're questioning, then I would encourage you to work on your self-awareness.
Okay. All right, we're closing up. We'll go to Dr. Gray first for any something she'd like to leave with people watching us. Then we'll go to Professor McGee, and then I'll say some closing words, and then Dr. Gray will give us a closing dua. Dr. Gray.
I think the sort of last thought that I'd like to leave everyone with tonight is that this is the beginning of a conversation that needs to happen continuously, and we really invite you to join the class so that you can be leaders in the conversation about leadership. Take that back to your communities, your mosques, your organizations, and really let's have the difficult conversations. Let's get trained up. Let's have these conversations so that we can prepare so that we can really uplift the work that's happening and manage and deal with all of the stuff that's being thrown at us continuously, and that's not going to end. So since that's not going to end, we want to be ready to do it and do it well.
Professor McGee.
I think what I would want for everyone attending and for my contribution is to help build your toolbox. You're going to need a lot of tools. You're going to have to be adaptable. You're going to have to be flexible. And not just to help your toolbox for your organization, but for you as a leader. So if you don't have a baseline for your leadership, then how are you going to measure how you're doing? So I hope to help give you a baseline of where your starting points are. So then you have something to come back to and check in, how am I doing? Build your self-awareness, and then build those tools in your toolbox so that you know how to apply, when to apply it, and hopefully pass those along to others for that. And I want to do it, that we had one last question on micromanagement and perfectionism, and I want to say that the short answer is, it is rarely long-term beneficial to be a micromanager. You're creating more work for yourself and more stress for those who you supervise. And that's a whole nother bag of chips that you come to the course and we can unpack it.
All right, so thank all of you for watching, and thanks to my faculty, co-faculty of the course. Of course, we invite you to join us, but it's not a walk-in course, so you'd have to apply. Even if you want to be an auditor, you have to apply because it is a graduate school. And we tried not to make money a bar to people. People are competent and people are willing to learn. We try to find a way to get you in. And I think that you'll find that we'll be dealing with issues that are very much alive and they're connected to what we're about. So inshallah, we hope to see some of you in the course. Of course, we're going to continue these TISA talks. We have youth mental health first aid training. We're going to be having workshops that we're going to be carrying around the nation. We're trying to help reshape the conversation about religion, not just Islam, religion and Islam in North America, and also fulfill our obligation based on Quran with Sunnah. So inshallah, we hope you'll join us in any way. Send us $1, make dua for us, join us in our workshops, or just send us an email, say, yeah, I like what you're doing, keep doing it, inshallah. Or I don't like what you're doing, why don't you do something else? So without further ado, closing dua from Dr. Gray.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت واستغفرك الله ونتوب إليك. Ya Allah, we turn to you and we ask of you blessings, and we ask of you to guide us in this leadership work, in this thinking around leadership, and in this practical application of what will please you and what will help to uplift and create the legacy that is necessary for the next generations. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد على نية القبول والفتوح مغفرة ورحمة. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد.
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.